it's Laura, the rural nurse. I'm here for your 8 o'clock appointment. Check your blood pressure. See you next time. I really enjoy my job as a rural nurse. However, there's a lot of challenges. Especially with this client here, I worry about him out here all by himself in the country. Sometimes it's hard to get here when the weather's bad, the shoveling isn't done. We have a hard time with water, as you can see. He gets it from outside. He's elderly and tries to work. I'm glad I get to check up on him once in a while, but there's a lot of struggles. So this is part of our client's property, and he does a lot of the gardening himself, which also sometimes concerns me. He's from a generation that doesn't have cell phones or anything like that. He's a hard worker and he still likes to be outside doing lots of work. I worry about him falling because nobody would find him until our next visit. Ever since his wife died, he's been a little bit more secluded. He likes to try to make his own meals, but I'm worried about his nutrition. He doesn't drive often anymore, and so he doesn't get the fresh produce unless it's from his garden. Because I'm on a schedule too, I don't often get to spend the time I want to with my client. I'm only here for a short period of time before I have to move on to the next client, and I have to dress his wound and can't take care of other things that I know he needs.
So I'm currently on the way to one of my clients' homes. Sometimes I find these drives to be quite challenging, depending on the time of year. Oftentimes in the winter, if the plows can't get to some of the roads, it's impossible for us to get there until the snow is cleared or until the conditions are better that the plows can get to them. So traveling is a bit of a challenge that we find working in these areas. Depending on what the issue is, I feel like I just don't have the resources available to me that I need. I don't know if this is going to be a long-term thing for me because of the nature of the work and the fact that I am here on a contractual basis. Hi everyone, we hope you enjoyed our video on rural nursing. We did it as a way to present the topic in a more creative way and hopefully just something different. Now what we're going to do is just go through the IAR framework so we can kind of understand it a little better, as our video was kind of just depicting scenarios and trying to show some of the challenges of rural nursing.
The first part of the IAR framework is issue. And the issue we've found is the recruitment and retention of rural nurses.
So to start with our analysis, looking at the historical section, what we found in research was that rural nursing really was kind of how nursing originated. A lot of nursing was done in rural settings until there was a shift into more urban centers, hospitals, and how this relates to our issue of recruitment and retention. And what we found in the research was at times rural nursing was displayed more in a negative light. It was a type of nursing that typically had fewer financial resources, less support.
So in a sense, the era of rural nursing became obsolete.
And then another issue we found related to the historical analysis was that it was typically not type of nursing in the forefront, at least even if we think about it in our minds when we started nursing. It's maybe something we learned about, but it was never something that we generally aspired to move toward because we didn't really know much about it.
The next section of the analysis is the legal and ethical section, which often in rural nursing, if you're living there, your clients are going to be your family, your friends, or even co-workers, and that blurs the lines of confidentiality and becomes a conflict of interest.
With the social and cultural analysis, typically in the research I found that The rural healthcare was often shaped by the behaviors of the people living in those rural populations. As well, which came up a lot was cultural competence and the importance of that, the nurse integrating themselves into a setting that maybe they're not familiar with the culture, and how important it is to become familiar with that to be effective in that setting. As well, the expectation of rural nurses to become generalists pretty early on in their career, just due to the lack of resources.
For the economic section of the IAR framework, rural populations often have less economic wealth, as well as fewer educational opportunities.
Another thing that we read about was the high cost of training in some of these areas. It just wasn't feasible for some educational programs. There was one college who had a number of rural students who maybe wouldn't have minded working in the rural settings of their own communities, but due to the high costs of sending students there, they all ended up in urban centers, and then that was kind of their focus in their nursing.
One of the issues that newer nurses may find is they're not as likely to accept a position in a rural area because they're threatened that their job might be not as secure as smaller rural hospitals get closed for larger centers. Political power tends to influence the belief that adequate care really only happens in larger centers and less likely to occur in rural settings.
So we've gone through our analysis to show why there's an issue of recruitment and retention in rural nursing. So now we will go over some of the resolution strategies that we've come up with based on the readings that we've done and some of our own brainstorming.
One resolution may be to provide more education to locals in the area. Instead of providing incentives for outsiders to come in, we can provide education to those who already live there and know the culture and may stay for longer and be more invested.
Another resolution strategy would be to increase training in these areas so that people may feel more confident and competent, because that was another reason we found in the literature that people left, because they simply didn't feel confident or equipped to work in these environments. But if they increase the training as well, maybe provide more educational opportunities for students in placement just to expose them to this type of...
A strategy that could be implemented might be not putting newer or younger nurses in leadership roles and overwhelming them right off the bat.
Another thing in any industry really is to provide realistic job previews so that the person knows a little bit more about what they're getting into, what they can expect, and they can therefore prepare themselves a little better. This could also help find people who are the right fit for the job, because not everybody would be, but finding someone who is the right fit is going to help with retention rates.
Something else that could be provided is more opportunity for professional development, so individuals don't feel as though they're at a standstill at their job. They can have more opportunities for more skill sets and advance in the career.
So what we were hoping for with our presentation was just to highlight some of the challenges that rural nurses might face, and we just wanted to communicate some of the challenges, such as things to consider like weather conditions, the expanded scope, the feeling like you have lack of resources, the struggles with
Time,
not having enough time that you'd want to have with your client, only being able to take care of that one issue, although they've got a lot of other things they might need help with.
We hope that we were able to highlight the need for confident and competent and engaged nurses in a rural work setting.
So we hope that some of the strategies we provided and the issues that we highlighted demonstrate a bit of why there's issues with recruitment and retention in these settings, and some possible ways of how to improve it.
Thanks for watching.